In this video, we wanted to talk to you a little bit about the hedonic reset. And a hedonic reset is basically this idea where you remove a lot of the pleasure from the foods that you're eating as a means to kind of reset your palate and your taste preferences. And the reason that something like this can be beneficial is simply because the modern obesogenic environment is full of a bunch of, highly processed, delicious combinations of fat, carbs, flavorings, salt, sugar, etc. And so it really messes with people's ability to
regulate their food intake.
Yes, regulate their food intake, and it also messes with people's appetites because they might have already eaten. Kevin Hall did a really good study on this. I think it was last year. It might have been earlier this year, though. I can't remember. Point is, like the very first randomized controlled trial to ever be conducted on this. And he fed people either an unprocessed diet or an ultra-processed diet and let them eat however much they wanted. And all the diets were matched identical for macronutrients and things of that nature. It was just the amount of processing that was different. Both groups reported the exact same levels of hunger and appetite and satiety. But the group eating the ultra-processed diet ate 500 more calories on average every day and ended up gaining weight compared to the group eating the unprocessed diet, which effectively means that they needed to eat more food and more calories to get the same satiety
signal.
Yep, to get the same satiety signal as those eating an unprocessed diet. And so, and Stephan Guyenet's written an entire book on the hungry brain and how processed foods can play into that and really override these inborn biological circuits that we have. So I think it's pretty safe to say that there's a good amount of data suggesting that eating a highly refined processed diet is not good for the waistline for a number of reasons, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
some people are more sensitive to this kind of stuff. Like I am definitely one of them. I cannot eat hyperpalatable foods and stay anywhere at a normal body composition.
And she did a really good blog post. You did a really good blog post on this on abstainers versus moderators. And so a lot of people know that there are certain foods that when they're around them, they just, encourage constant eating. And
like
so
peanut butter for me.
Yeah. And so
I'll smash a whole jar and I'm tiny.
Point being, though, is that this happens with like entire diets for a lot of people out there. And so a hedonic reset is something where you remove all of these very, very flavorful combinations.
Yep.
And this should help reset your taste palate and make things that once were like normal tasting to you might actually be too rich and too sweet or too salty for you to eat as much as you did previously because your baseline has been reduced.
So I would like to talk about like what you would do as a setup for this for like a week, 2 weeks, and what would you eat and what would you avoid?
I would spend 3 to 4 weeks doing it personally. I think 3 to 4 weeks is sufficient time to get everything reset up. And it's basically, I just want you to like think of the most boring whole foods possible and eat those. It's a simple,
like our friend Kate Ann.
Yeah, right. It's basically, okay, you're going to eat, some white fish or even fatty fish, really. You're just going to eat some fish, some potatoes.
Plain potatoes.
And that's it.
So, yeah, with those kind of things like vegetables, no dressings, like maybe some vinegar, but no dressings. I would avoid salting your food, but I would eat salt. I would take like a teaspoon or 2 teaspoons through the day outside of a meal. I know that sounds horrible, huh? But
yeah, this isn't going to, like,
this is providing your body with the nutrients without associating the taste with other pleasurable.
Yeah, this isn't meant to be fun. It's basically lean meats. If you eat nuts, they should be raw nuts. They shouldn't be roasted or salted. No dressings, like no condiments, no salting your food, no seasoning your food. It's just a very bland, boring diet. Reset your taste palate.
And then when you start eating like rich food, I mean, I've done similar things before. And when I start eating like anything salty, because I'm a salt lover, it tastes like too much and it's hardly anything what I'm used to.
Yeah. And so then you're just disinclined to eat to eat it, or to at the very least eat as much as you want.
And you'll go back to your old ways too if you start eating the way you were. Like the first few days, you'll be like, whoa. So that's not the idea behind this.
Yeah,
Like
it's very much like, well, I'm going to use, let's use drugs as an example, because I think it's something everyone is at least cognitively aware of. And it's like, if you use a drug once, you get a super big high. Subsequent uses do not give you that same high because your brain becomes accustomed to that high. And so now you need more and more of the drug to continue to reach that level. It's the same with food. If you're like eating the super rich German chocolate cake and you eat it on a regular basis, then suddenly it's just going to be like, because it's not doing much to your pleasure centers. You become accustomed to it. When one bite
was sufficient before, like
yeah,
you shared the dessert with friends, and then it turns into you're having the whole cake by yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And
because you're trying to get that same dopamine response in your brain, and it's just never going to happen.
Yep. And so that's the entire purpose of this. And we have good research showing that works. We literally have studies conducted throughout the 20th century where they take like morbidly obese individuals. So I'm talking people that weighed, off memory, 350 to 400 pounds. Okay, so they were overeating chronically. Like you don't get that big not overeating. And so they were habitually eating, to gain, so their maintenance was like 3,500 to 4,000 calories. And that means they had to be eating more than that on a regular basis to continue gaining that much weight. And yet when researchers took these individuals, locked them in a room, and gave them a machine where they had unlimited access to a calorie-dense liquid thing like a milkshake that they could dispense as much as and consume as much as they wanted, but it had no flavor, none. That's how it was designed. They spontaneously, by their own will, they just started eating an average of 300 to 600 calories every day, and they didn't complain of hunger. They said, I haven't had any issues with hunger. They actually told the researchers that, and they lost weight rapidly. One person even took, pictures of this liquid home to store in his fridge and just continued to consume that, only that, after the study ended.
Because it was so effective.
Yeah, and for, I don't remember the time frame, but it was over like 6 months or so, he ended up losing 200 pounds exclusively by just eating a bland liquid diet. And so that's the power of like eating boring food you just don't want to eat. And part of it is because.
And this is probably a horrible idea for those who have eating disorders, like eating disorders on the spectrum of anorexia and bulimia, and probably a horrible idea for people that struggle to get their calories in.
Yes.
So that is to be noted. You don't have anything to fix if you fall into those camps.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's all we really had to say about the hedonic reset. It can be a valuable tool if you're overweight or obese and struggling to kind of get control over your diet. Start with a hedonic reset as like your kickoff point.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed the content of this video, then awesome. That's what we're trying to do. And if you know someone who you think a hedonic reset would benefit, then send this video their way.
Bye.
Thanks.